My name is Tim Bowerman, and I am passionate about wood turning. So wood turning is essentially using a lathe, a wood lathe, and you mount a chunk of wood onto the lathe, and then you get it spinning, 500 to 2,000 RPMs, and you take a sharp tool and shove it into it. So you shape the wood on the lathe, and you can create all sorts of different things. I got into wood turning a few years back. My father, both my parents had just retired and moved out this way, and I thought that it would be a good hobby for my father and I to kind of explore, give us something to do. So we got our first lathe. It was kind of a hand-me-down lathe, or used lathe. And then shortly after we got that, the pandemic hit, and I was a teacher at the time. It was a very stressful time in the world of education, and so I kind of leaned into wood turning as a way to kind of cope with a lot of that stress, and really developed a passion for it, and continuing to learn and improve and explore it. If I want to talk about the full process, I'll talk what most turners do is they start with a log. So somebody downed a tree, they have access to a log somehow, and so if I want to turn a bowl, I start at the log pile and I chop up a log using it. I chainsaw it into usable chunks of wood. With the thought process of what am I going to turn with these chunks. So if I'm cutting up a log for bowls, then I want to make sure that I'm chunking this log up to make bowl blanks, is what we call them. So once I have my log cut, I can do a couple things. I can seal the ends up and then let it sit there for a few years, and then come back and turn it and make a bowl out of it once it's fully dry. Or I can rough turn it, and so this is what a lot of turners do. They will mount the chunk of wood on the lathe, they will turn it into a rough shape of a bowl, they'll leave it very thick, then they'll seal that up and let that dry, and that considerably reduces the amount of time. So instead of it being maybe 3 years to fully dry, it might be 6 months to a year, depending on the size of the bowl and the thickness that you leave it. So then once that is fully dry, they'll remount it on the lathe and finish turning it. And so from start to finish, that can be a years-long process depending on your drying methods. There are some methods out there to speed that up. So if I have somebody that orders a bowl and I need to dry a blank, I use something called desiccant, which is like silica beads that kind of like what you find in like a shoe when you buy new shoes, and that takes the moisture out. So I take a rough turned bowl, I set it in this desiccant, and after about a week or so, it's fully dry. Yeah, so a lot of my education has definitely been from watching and then going out and trying. And you fail at something, you just put a new chunk of wood on and you try again. So some things are fairly simple. When I started off turning, some of the first things I did were spinning tops for my kids. I still love turning those. I turn those fairly regularly. It's a very simple project. I think I was pretty successful right off the bat with that. But when it came to bowls, I've had a lot of broken bowls, a lot of pieces that didn't work out, or that started off as a big bowl, and because I kept messing up, it kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, it's just a lot of trial by error, and sometimes you're more successful than others. So I guess the reason I love wood turning and keep coming back, there's a few reasons. For one, I find it's almost very therapeutic, you know, and I think in our day-to-day lives, it's so hard to get away from screens and put our phones down, and you know, and to disconnect from the social media and all those other things that we're constantly bombarded with. And so I can go out and you know, turn on the lathe, and it's like I can put everything else away, and it's just me and you know, whatever project I'm taking on. And you know, I really enjoy that. You know, it's a very easy way for me to disconnect and clear my mind, and I think, you know, that is something that, you know, especially over this pandemic and everything, has really helped with my own mental health. And then, you know, beyond that, wood turning it's such a large art. I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to say that. It's such a, there's so much variation to what you can do in wood turning. You know, there's really just no limit, and there's so many skills that you can add on to wood turning where, you know, if I ever did get bored with what I'm doing, I can start adding in carving to my wood turnings. I can start playing with different colors and dyes. There's a lot of turners who you know, do a lot of really cool things with color. I can get into epoxy and resins, and you know, I'm sure you've seen wood turn videos of people making like colored pencil bowls and things, and so there's just so much you can do in the world of epoxy and resin. There's no end to what you can learn and grow and do with wood turning, and for me, that's something that I always want to learn more. I want to keep pushing myself, and I also, you know, I think there's an element of it's fairly unique. There's not a lot of wood turners out there. You know, not to say that there aren't wood turners out there, but there's not a lot. You know, I can find, you know, if I go to a craft fair, I can find somebody who does woodworking, you know, stone's throw away in any direction, but I might only see one or two other wood turners there, and so there's an appeal to kind of that unique form of art and woodworking. So that I really like. I like feeling like I'm doing something that's a little less mainstream and a little more unique. Every year since I started, every year I have done ornaments that I turn for various elementary classrooms, and this last year I added on a special needs recreation facility out in Will County. And so I just make their, you know, 2.5, 3 inches tall snowmen and Christmas trees. This last year I think it was a little over 100 ornaments that I turned and donated for kids and individuals with special needs to decorate. They paint them, and then, you know, they take them home. So that's something that I really enjoy doing. I plan to continue doing it every year. I do a lot of charity auctions, which, you know, I also enjoy donating pieces so they can be auctioned off. Last year at Chaina does an infinity run, and I made, it was the first time I made a coffee grinder. And so coffee grinder kit hardware, you know, I purchased, but I created the vessel that it attached to, and so it was a pretty big hit, and it was a lot of fun to do and kind of push myself into trying something new. This year I'm gonna try to put together a bigger collection of things, a more cohesive collection of things for that event. So yeah, I mean, I guess the most enjoyable things, I mean, I enjoy all of it. You know, anytime I'm at the lathe, I'm enjoying it. But I really, you know, one of the things that I wanted to do from the first time I turned is get to a point where I can turn it into a charitable thing, and you know, help in that way. And so that's kind of become a passion as well. So I stopped by the Spark Shop. I really didn't know anything about it. I know I had seen some posts. I think they had opened up at right at the start of the pandemic, and I didn't know a lot about it, so I went out and stopped by one of the days that they were open, and I talked with one of the vendors there, and she works at Focus House as well, and so we had that connection. And I had donated some things to the From the Heart charity, and had communicated with her when I did that. And so when I started talking with her, and she was telling me a little bit about the Spark Shop, it was kind of, I left and it was just sitting on the back of my head, like, I should really try to, step out of my comfort zone a little bit and try that. And as a wood turner, there's some anxiety with that, because like I said, it can take me years to process from a log to usable pieces. And so building up an inventory is a very time involved process. And if you go to a craft fair and you see somebody out and they've got 100 turnings, and it's like, oh, that's great. They've probably been turning for 10, 15, 20 plus years, and they've built up to that stock. That's not an overnight process. Unless I want to spend a lot of money buying already dried wood. And so at any rate, I had that kind of sitting on the back of my head, and then I saw that they were getting a new vendor. The Fireside Bakery was going to be going in there, and I thought, well, I don't want to miss my opportunity. So I contacted the Chamber of Commerce and talked with them, and yeah, they checked out my stuff on Facebook, and the Bowerman woodworking page that I have, and they liked what I had and thought I'd be a good fit. So they don't have anybody in there that does wood turnings, and so they got me set up. And so right now I have a few bowls, some spinning tops. I've not turned items, but I make these book buddies that are really nice for one-handed reading, holding the book open. And I think I've got a scoop in there. And so, and a lot of vases, twig pots and dry bud vases. So not a lot of items there right now. I think maybe 15 or 20 items. I'm always turning, and I like to turn new things all the time, so I'm always going to be adding new things to the shop. So I think it'll be a good experience for me as a turner to see what people are interested in, and maybe to connect with some more people in town, and get my name out there a little bit more. But then it'll give me a place to store all my turnings, so I'm not just filling up my house. So as I'm turning new things, I can put them in the shop, and maybe somebody else will find that it brings them joy, and they can add it to their house. So right now I have a Facebook page, Bowerman Woodworking. I'm still newly venturing out into the world, so I haven't created any kind of like an actual business page or anything. People can find me on Facebook, Bowerman Woodworking, send me a message. I do take custom orders and that. I'm happy to work, and if somebody's interested in something, I will do my best to create something for them that they're happy with. So.